Hey, so I wanted to pivot into our value type stocks, and so that's what's currently on the screen. We have about nine. I kind of got a jump start on a couple of these because during this video, I want to focus on these three. So I already kind of looked at Adobe and Linde. So this is kind of the summary already for those two. I am going to break it down. If you're wondering why I already kind of jumped ahead on those two. There was just a technical issue, and so without realizing it, uh, I wasn't recording or the video just malfunctioned. But anyway, so um, when we're going through these, I just want to say if you have any questions or if you have a difference of opinion on any of our price points, by all means, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it, at least your questions, or we can discuss any differences, and that'd be great. But otherwise, let's start with Adobe. I can tell you, um, the last time we looked at this was right around April 5th, maybe April 6th, so about 2 months ago. But again, this is kind of the summary, but I will go into the technical chart to show just kind of what's changed. So what I added, I can tell you, I added in these projection boxes. So this box right here, and I'll zoom in a little bit. This box here, that's kind of the projection that I'm seeing for uh, where the stock price is today to where I think it will be, some sort of range between now and the end of the second quarter, which would be the end of the month. This box here would be the end of the third quarter, so around September 30th. Uh, the other lines I added is this minor resistance point at about 471. I also added a more stronger resistance point at 510. That's kind of why one red line is thicker than the other. And then I also included these purple uptrend lines. So if I scroll back a little bit, and we'll just kind of break down the purple lines and then scale back into the boxes. So this first uptrend line here, the lower one, I guess I'll say, that's getting pulled from information back here. If we go back to about 2016, beginning of 2016, all the way up to about 2020, it was in this trend that I didn't run the numbers. I could do that, but uh, just on an estimate, it's probably like 15% return. And then all of a sudden in 2020, we can see it starts to accelerate, maybe like a 30% return. So both those numbers are pretty good. Both are going to beat the market. Obviously, we're looking for numbers that are like 25% is like the ideal. But, you know, as long as we can get diversification and more or less beat the market, I'd be happy with that. Uh, but yeah, so I point that out because those two uptrends are clearly way above where this stock is right now. And so that is one take that we could make on this stock is that this it, if we stick with this lower trend line, we could say, okay, around 2020, it all of a sudden it had this dip like most stocks did, and then it surged up, which kind of makes sense. Again, without looking at the financial statements, I know a lot of tech stocks did see a lot of improvements in terms of their income and revenue. So this kind of makes sense. And then the fact that it pulled back, um, again, without looking at the financial statements, that kind of makes sense that it would pull back some to some degree. But Adobe is more of like a subscription based platform. So to pull back the way it did so drastically, to me, it kind of seems like it might have overcorrected. Again, once we get into the news aspect, probably at the end of the month, I hope, the picture will be painted a little clearer. But that's just one idea that we could think about is that it might have overcorrected here and now it's kind of trying to get back into this trend line. That's very possible. We're not going to say that at this moment. Things might change, but for now, we're going to consider that this trend line right here, which was in the last video, if anything, I just extended it out a little bit further, but it's the same lines. We're going to stick with that. And so let's just zoom in. If we're looking at this trend line, the things and the reason why I marked it red for now is because, number one, it's above the trend line. So it'd be one thing if it was like up here towards the top. Even then, I would have marked it red, but the fact that it's gone above and beyond, to me, that's just, I don't like that. And me personally, I'm waiting for it to at least pull back to the lower end of the trend line. And the reason why I'm giving this trend line slightly more priority over the consolidation lines, which would be this green line, the blue, and then these red lines, I'm giving it a little more priority because, again, long term, we've seen this company does rally for many years, and so this is potentially another rally. But we saw some consolidation, and that's why we were giving some weight, at least in the earlier videos, maybe the last two videos that we made on this. We were giving some priority to this, to the green buy point, the blue fair value. We are still going to give some weight to these resistance points because I do think that's going to weigh in on this at some point. And I think we're going to see that even like now. I think we're going to see it get rejected right around 442 like it did before at May of 22, again in August of 22. And I think we're just going to see it one more time. It's going to bounce back probably in this range by the end of the month. And then it's going to carry up forward. And then eventually it will pass that 442 mark and then just kind of continue on. And then maybe at 510, it might struggle to get over that. Also, maybe 471, it might hesitate a little bit, but 510 is more like a more strict line where I think it could struggle further, sort of like a 442. And if you're wondering how I came up with those numbers, the 442, if we just look back, it's really not based on that much. Like, I could argue one time was down here, 442, where it got above, but pulled right back down. That's more so why I picked 471, but we could also make an argument for 442 there. But 442, I would say, is more concentrated on these 2 points in June of 22 and then in August of 22, where it clearly went below that resistance point, tried to get back above it, got rejected, came back down to a lower low, tried rallying up to 442, got rejected at that point again. Not exactly, but right around that mark, pulled back down again, ultimately led to this low for the past like 3 years. And now here we are rallying up again. And it looks like now we're going to get rejected right around 442, pull back. And that's kind of the story of that. 471, the reason that got picked is, again, because of this one point back here in about July of 2020. There was some hesitation here where it tested 471 in about March, April of 22. And that's pretty much the story there. So that's why I think it won't be much resistance, but it could kind of stall out there, chop sideways, and then it might push forward. And then 510, that one I feel like is going to be a very pivotal point. Potentially won't see that until maybe the end of the year, maybe beginning of next year. But that one I feel more resistance towards because it tested it once, twice, 3, 4, 5. You could argue that's a 6th time. So 6 times where it couldn't get above it. Ultimately, it did, at least for about maybe a 6-month period. And then it pulled back down, and here we are today. What I normally do is, I'll update my tracker here, which it already has been. So let's just share the summary and we'll just move on. Uh, just keep it moving. So Adobe, for right now, I'm marking it red, meaning it's close to resistance, so I'm not interested in buying it right now. Currently, it's at 432. Buy points I have picked are 324 and 360. And let me just share how those points were made. So 324, that is the green line. That's probably kind of getting out of the question at this point. And then 360, I'm just taking where it is today, dragging down, and right here at the bottom of this upward channel, that is where 360 is. So 360, if this one kind of trends downwards over, say, a month, 360 could easily be like 370. So just keep that in mind. And then resistance, I kind of went through that pretty thoroughly. So we have 442, that's kind of where we are now. 471, it might struggle a little bit. And then 510, I think is going to be a big pivot point for this one. But overall, the notes that I have, it's been in that uptrend for about the past 8 months, and we would be interested in buying the dips on this. So let me know your thoughts on that. But with that out of the way, let's move on to the second one. So Linde, again, you're kind of getting a preview on this. Again, similar to Adobe, last time we looked at this was about 2 months ago. But this is kind of what we're seeing right now. So let's pivot into Linde. So Linde, if we pull up the tracker here, I guess I'll just kind of share it. The note that we have is it's been in an uptrend for 7 years, since 2016, and for us, we would just be buying the dips on this. So if we bring it back up, that's what these purple lines are. So going back to about 2016, it's similar to Adobe. It had this nice uptrend channel. I'm not sure, maybe like a 20% return. And then all of a sudden in about 2020, sure, it had this dip, and then it really kind of accelerated its uptrend to maybe like a 45, 50% year over year, or at least the angle. And so since 2020, it's held that point. It's definitely gone below where it probably overcorrected here, or not overcorrected, but it crashed in 2020. Pretty quickly though, 3-4 months, it got back into trendline. Then it maybe accelerated a little bit too much, but not crazy. Then what we saw is it likely overcorrected, and that's why it shot out the bottom. And now here we are today where it's back in that trend line. So I do like the idea of sticking with the trend line, and that's going to have a higher priority over our bands going horizontal, this green line, the blue line, and the red line. Those lines were definitely active for a period. Probably are going to remove those possibly the next time we circle back to this, but I want to keep them in for right now. But those were very active because since about second quarter of 2021 all the way up to just about like 3 or 4 months ago, it really was consolidating between this line. And the thing is, at the earlier points, sure, we could have got this one right around, say, that green line is about 280. It's weird how that you could have like a different mindset at the same price point. It's interesting because if I saw this stock at 280 in like mid to early 2021, based on our projection of our trend line, I would say this one's overvalued. But then fast forward, we see it kind of rise and fall, and all of a sudden, right around that same point in July of 22, I'm seeing it below our trend line. Now all of a sudden I'm saying, oh, that's probably a decent buy. And so it's just, it's interesting how you could come across the same price point at different times and feel a different way. Just something to keep in mind. But yeah, so sticking with this one, you saw in the tracker that I gave it a fair value. So currently it's at 359. Last time we did look at this was right around here, so about 356. So not much has changed in terms of price. Clearly a lot of action happened with this one where it accelerated up to about what new highs, 372, pulled back a little bit, and here we are at 359. And that kind of makes sense because, again, the tracker didn't show it, but previously we didn't have a resistance point on this. We ended up putting one in, but again, it's very minor, and I just put one in just for uniformity with the spreadsheet. But for this, yeah, the reason I give it a fair value is because, again, in that uptrend, it's on the bottom half of it. Ideally, we would want it close to the very bottom, and so that's why the buy point for this, at least this week, would be around like 344 would be the ideal. If it would dip all the way down to 330, that would be great. But those are kind of the price points I'm looking for. This one, we'll kind of see. It might have to wait a little bit longer to catch a real dip. And again, it might be one of those things where, yeah, you might just want to get in now because, when it actually pulls back, it could easily like trade sideways between now and maybe the next like month. And all of a sudden, it's still at 359, but it's over here. So now all of a sudden it seems like a better value. It's really just a judgment call, and it'll just depend on, are you willing to, I guess, spend a little more than the ideal price? Right now, again, the ideal price would be 343. This is at 359, so it's just $16. If you really want in this and you don't have any, again, I think it's fair. It's not overvalued. Again, it's just preference at this point. So if I were to project this one out for the second quarter, where do I think this one's going to fall? Probably going to be right around, probably going to be in this range. I think that's pretty fair. Obviously, these stocks can like shoot off a little bit. We've seen it many times, so we'll see how close I am. The tricky thing is like the news aspect, but yeah, I would say this is fair. The reason why I'm going to give it a little more towards the upper end of the channel is because if we scale back and look at long term, it kind of seems to hang out on the upper end. So if anything, maybe this is like a dip in this one, But that's kind of the theory of why I'm giving a hedge towards the higher end of the channel as opposed to the lower end. We'll see how that plays out. And then third quarter, I don't know if I can, hold on. I can do some here. Okay, so third quarter, very similar. Without kind of looking into news and just realizing it has this uptrend, all I'm going to do for that is this is going to be my projection. It's probably going to be in this type of range between about 359 all the way up to about 401. So that's also something we can look at, is that right now it's at 359. If we look at our projected second quarter and third quarter and just overall uptrend, this one is currently at like the very bottom of those boxes. So with that in mind, it almost seems like it's kind of makes sense to get it. Again, it's the reason why it's fair is because it's at the level already, if that makes sense. If it was like below those levels and there was chance to get up there, then it would be a better opportunity to buy this. But that's just my thinking. Let me know your thoughts. So let's just kind of do a quick summary here. So Linde here, for now I'm giving it this fair value in blue. Currently it's at 359. Buy points at 330, 343. Resistance 380. Again, that would have just been the very peak of the channel this week. That of course would change over time. Updated the date. Noted that it's in the 7-year uptrend since 2016. And to buy the dips. That's kind of my approach at this point. And then let's wrap up with Berkshire. So Berkshire.B, it's currently, or at least the last time we looked, again about 2 months ago, it was trading for at 310. We had buy points marked at 274 and 295, and we also had resistance at 321, noting that it's been relatively flat for the past 6 months. So let's take a look, see how it's been for the past 2 months. So this, I'm not sure how much has changed. I feel like a lot has changed since the last time. So similar to Adobe, I kind of went ahead and added some trend lines. Hopefully that kind of saves us some time here. I'm pretty certain I added in these yellow trend lines. So yellow would be like the active trend line, like what's going on right now. So let's just start with that. Originally, we were kind of using the method of the green, blue, and red lines, those horizontal lines, and that is where we came up with 274, which is the green buy point, and 295. I thought we were kind of seeing some support at 295, which meant it was kind of like the new buy point. That's why those 2 points are there. But I noticed we're now seeing this uptrend since about October. So relatively flat for 6 months. That was based off of here. You know, we could say end of October till about 4-5, which is this point right here. So this range, that's what I'm referring to. It was flat between 295 and 321 for 6 months. But now that it's all of a sudden stepped up and it looks like it's going to continue to climb, we can now say it's in this uptrend. And it's been in that since about October till today. So we're going to just change that from relatively flat for 6 months to in an uptrend for past 8 months starting in October of 22. So that's just something to keep in mind here. Also, what we did is we added in these 2 purple uptrends. So again, similar to Adobe here, this one purple uptrend, the darker purple uptrend, that line is just based on, it kind of seems like we could make an argument that after this dip in 2020, it kind of has played out that way. And so, you know, I don't want to put too much weight behind it, only because it really shot off, like way above it. And yes, that's happened with others before. It's just, I don't know. I just don't want to give so much weight behind it, but I do want to give a percentage. Not sure, maybe like 25%, something like that. Less than 50, I can say that. We also noted this, we actually put a couple trend lines in here. So we had one down here. Whoops. So we had this middle trend line here. We could have made the argument that from 2008 all the way up until about 2020, it was in this range, right? At, I don't know, maybe like a 20% return. Prior to that, from like the very beginning, 1996, all the way up to about, I guess 2007, maybe 2008, it was in an uptrend channel too, where it was maybe getting like 10, 15%. all of a sudden accelerated. Then we saw a new acceleration, which we're currently in. Um, if we factor all that together, kind of what's going to play out at this point, uh, there's just a lot to think about. So my opinion might change over time, and especially if I like dig into like news sources to see like what's the price to earnings ratio, things like that. But for now, like how I'm looking at it right now is I'm giving the yellow uptrend a certain amount of weight, but for some reason, I want to give weight to this darker purple uptrend line. I want to try to average the two together. And so while it's on the bottom half of that yellow uptrend line, it's also on the upper half of the purple trend line. And so with that in mind, like overall, I'm going to give this one fair value at this point until I find out more about it. And that's just because, again, it's very near the middle of the yellow uptrend, and it's on the higher end of the purple uptrend. And I just want to see which one wins out. We'll find out very soon, probably in the next like 2 months, which one's the more important trend line, which one's the market going to follow. So for now, what I'm kind of projecting, at least for between now and the end of second quarter, I think we're going to be somewhere in this range. 1 second as I draw this in. I think we're going to be somewhere between here. So right between about 325 and 345. We're currently at 333. Right around in the middle. I'm giving a little more weight to the yellow uptrend line. That's why I drew it above that. And this point is right around halfway between the purple line. I think once we get to end of second quarter, we'll kind of have a better idea of where's this one going. Is it going to stick with the yellow uptrend, which that is very steep for a value type stock. So I don't think that one's going to last very long, but we'll see. And then I'm thinking it might kind of correct into this purple trend line and something unique that could just be a coincidence, but if we zoom back out and we look at these two light purple uptrend lines, this one where we noted from 96 up until about where was it? About 2008. That was 12 years. This purple trend line here, the middle purple trend line from 2008 to 2020, also 12 years. And now here we are now. I can't imagine this purple trend line being that steep. For some reason, I just feel like the growth is too powerful in that one to last for 12 years. Sure, it could, but I don't know. That just seems very steep. I think it might stick with that maybe another year, possibly, but I think we're going to find ourselves somewhere in the middle, but who knows? I mean, to go from this lower purple trend line to that middle one, that was quite a jump too. So to go from there to now this darker, the upper purple trend line, we'll see. That's just kind of where my mind's at right now. For this one, I'm actually going to hold off on projecting a third quarter just because I want to see how this plays out, especially the next time we circle back to it. And so actually let me update the tracker because I didn't do that before. So it went from 310 all the way up to where it is right now at 333. For me, a buy point right now, I would probably say 321. I'd be at least interested. Ideally, maybe like 305. So those ones are going to get completely changed to 305 and 321. 305, that would just be at the very bottom of this purple uptrend channel. 321 is the bottom of the yellow. It also seems like there was some support found here over the past like a month and a half, so that kind of makes sense. We could touch on that point again. Resistance at this point, potentially 340 would be the top of the purple channel, all the way up to about 352. So we'll just put in those 2 points for now, which were, what was this middle one? About 339. So 339 and 352. We'll change the date to today. And then our note was it's in this uptrend for the past 8 months, starting in October of 22. We'll leave it at that for now. So overall, I'll give it a fair value at this point. I think there's going to be better opportunities, but you know, again, this one doesn't seem bad. Just I think there'll be something else out there for us. So that's the summary for Berkshire. Currently it's at 333. Buy points from me, at least right now, would be 305, would be great. 321, I would still consider it. Resistance at 339 and 352. So kind of in the middle there, but kind of hedging towards resistance. And then we saw this uptrend for the past 8 months. And then we could also scale it back to like 2020. We could make a case there. But this is the more active trend line. So for the past 8 months. So it's starting to gain some weight behind it. But that wraps this up. Please like, subscribe, and feel free to leave any comments down below. I'd be happy to read that. But that's it. So I'll see you on the next one.